6:17 or 18 p.m. Want to call a roll, please?
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Ide?
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Here. So, do anybody have future agenda items? Then we'll move on. 16-620 Clackamas Park boat ramp letter of support. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner.
That's so confusing to me.
Wait a minute.
To sit next to each other. So staff is seeking recommendation of the commission. There has been a request by the Oregon State Marine Board to provide some direction to them in relation to a support letter. As all of you are aware, the current boat ramp at Clackamas Park was recently refinished, and is life cycle timeline is about a 5-year replacement period. Recommendation from the Oregon State Marine Board based on a hydrology study that was conducted is that the current placement of the boat ramp is not sustainable long term, and that the boat ramp would needed to be moved 350 feet or so downriver of the current boat ramp, closer to the Willamette River. I know that there are concerns from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee as well as the Commission on the upland development and what that looks like for current green space in the park. The Oregon State Marine Board is currently looking for recommendation for moving the ramp, not necessarily for what the upland redevelopment might look like in relation to the ramp. They are open to hearing concerns of community members as well as staff and commission in relation to the loss of green space and what safety measures might be put in place to mitigate the addition of the boat ramp 350 feet downriver of the current ramp location. So the Oregon State Marine Board, in partnership with Oregon City staff, conducted an open house to the public in September, where they went through the study, went through the rationale of the relocation, including why it is not feasible to locate it in its current position or to move the placement of the boat ramp onto the Willamette side of the park. The open house was generally received well by the public. It went before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee on September 22nd and passed by motion to recommend to support the project and move the boat ramp the 350 feet downriver. Again, the upland design portion is negotiable. Speaking with staff from the Oregon State Marine Board, they are primarily looking for support from the city in relation to them getting the project placed onto their queue for work projects. Is a very long permitting process, which can take years. And the concern is that they want to make sure that they have dedicated staff time as well as the time needed to go through the permitting process in order to complete the project before the life cycle of the current replaced boat ramp ends, and that we are not left in a position where we don't have any boat ramp or water access at Clackamas Park for boaters. And at that, I will open it up to questions and discussion along
Okay.
the commission.
Normally, we don't take public testimony at work sessions. However, we have a representative from both the Natural Resources Committee for Oregon City as well as the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee. So I will take that testimony at this time. Mr. Neely, Mayor Neely, and Mr. Herman, please.
Sean Dashel, the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Committee, was not able to attend. He requested me to represent the Parks and Recreation Committee. There are 3 other members here from the Parks and Recreation Committee, and I would ask if they have other comments to make in addition to what I say, that they be able to do so. I'm also chair of the Natural Resource Committee, but I felt that I should represent two organizations. Jerry Herman will be speaking on behalf of the Natural Resource Committee. Parks and Recreation Committee agreed to the replacement of the current boat ramp on a temporary basis. We had concern of several of the design options that were presented at the time. I think the commission had the same concerns because some of those options actually bifurcated the park down there to the extent that it would not be able to function for the community as it was planned. We do believe there are probably methods to get the boats out there to a better facility when it's built, but the impact on the park and the park size ought to be taken into consideration, and at least I think two of those options we were very, very concerned about.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners, for letting us speak to you about this issue. I'm totally in favor of boating facilities. I'm a little bit on the concern side of this particular situation, but let me speak on behalf of the Natural Resource Committee. At our work session planning the things we're going to do over the next year or two, based on your goals and objectives and linking them together, we undertook a discussion about this issue, and we noted in particular that we've never been asked to be a part of the review, and yet we do all the other review for all riparian areas, river corridors, streams, any wetland delineation projects. They come to us in a preliminary way or a more advanced way, but one way or the other we involve ourselves in those kind of things. I gave you a handout that kind of describes what we do. And I want to mention that we led the effort to support Clackamas Cove. Have never backed away from that. We've always been supportive. We've tried to also interface with other projects that you have where a positive outcome is supposed to occur, and we want to see that happen and are willing to negotiate to make sure that does kind of happen. That kind of thing does happen. The Lower Harbor Trust Fund, Commissioner Shaw and myself and others on your staff brought to the city, and now it's moving forward, and I think it's going to have a real impact that's favorable, not just to Clackamas Cove, but other areas along the riverfront. So at our meeting a week ago, we asked to be included the Marine Board facilities because they're so much of the time involving riparian areas in our work plan. We asked to have a joint meeting with PRAC to discuss some ways to perhaps adjust this project. Maybe not the boat ramp placement, but at least the effects to the park in terms of the disassembling of the existing tree canopy and shrubbery and so forth. Today I went down to the Public Works office and got some aerials to look at to compare it 20 years ago till today. And it's a huge change in the canopy that's occurred there, as well as the understory vegetation too. So our request to you, and it's in this document here, I'll just summarize it, is that we be allowed to participate in a process with PRAC to look at ways to adjust the project, not kill it. That's not our intention. Well, I understand, and I've been told, particularly by Marine Board staff, that 40% of all the boat, trailer, and vehicle parking areas for boats exists at Clackamas Park in this area, 40%. That includes Melbourne Bar, and it also includes the facilities at Sportcraft Landing, that launch point. So the reason that they're concerned here is that this is already a significant area for them to stage boating operations out of. That totally makes sense. It's what can we do to make the egg, if it has to be broken a bit, become an omelet. I think that's what we're after here. So that's in summary what I had to say on behalf of Natural Resources.
Okay.
I'd like to add just one more thing. I brought the desire of the Natural Resource Committee to have a joint meeting with PRAC as we develop our goals for the next year, and also we'll be making recommendations to the Commission in terms of things that might require budget decisions on your part before you have your meeting next year. If this is of urgency, I'm sure both committees would be willing to come down into a special work session to talk about this specific issue.
I don't think this particular thing is of urgency. I think what they're talking about is just us giving the blessing for moving the boat ramp downriver a couple hundred feet. that all the upland stuff is negotiable, so everything inside the park, as far as, tearing down trees and moving roads and all that, that's going to be part of the discussion, and certainly both of your committees will be involved in that discussion moving forward, but they just need a letter from us to make a placeholder in their work plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on. Is there discussion from the commission? Commissioner Smith? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, you did. I was trying to hit the button.
Okay.
When this is, we're not making a decision on this. I mean, what we're doing tonight. We're not going to vote on this.
We're
in a
providing
commission
some
meeting.
direction as far as issuing a letter of
Okay.
support.
I don't support this at all, and I have huge concerns about it, and I don't want, I guess, the implication that it's a unanimous thing that I want to support this, because I sure as hell don't. I have huge concerns about all the four options. I think none of them work. So the question I think that we have as a commission is, if we acknowledge that there is no other option other than having the boat ramp where they say it should be, then we as a commission need to really think about what that park's going to look like. Because if that boat ramp is placed where they are saying it's going to be placed, that might be doable if we redesign the entire park. If that parking lot goes away that exists and is on the flip side where the boat ramp is. But if you just keep the parking lot and add a boat ramp, you lose half the park. And that is not something that I want the state to think we support in any way. But also, this commission has still, even after numerous times of having the conversation and me asking for these conversations, has still not made a decision in over 10 years on whether or not we want to keep the RV park or not, whether we want to sell the property across the street or not. So unless we have any conversation about those, and obviously those conversations need to be continuing as this piece does, I just worry about the scenario when that boat ramp starts being put in and we have no plan to redesign the park to deal with the loss of all that green space. And I think we should be driving it, not the state. And if we don't know what that park's going to look like, then we shouldn't support changing that boat ramp yet. We haven't even had the conversation if we should have 2 boat ramps in this town. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but we haven't even had that conversation. So I think there's a lot of questions to be answered before we support this. And I understand the queue, but considering the fact that we've been talking about these issues since before I was even on the commission and none of them have been answered, I don't anticipate them being answered in the 2 or 3 years that it's going to take to put this on the queue line.
Well, I've only been here just a little over 18 months, so you can't blame me for that.
I'm blaming everyone for that. I'm just saying, I don't see that changing quickly.
Anybody else? Commissioner Megaberg.
Just a couple of questions of staff. So will this, since the current boat ramp is in a precarious location that hydrology is going to keep washing it out, is this new location not subject to those same hydraulic forces? So if we put it there, it's going to stay there for a while?
Have you read the material?
We just got it today. There was
No,
no
we have
material
not.
provided.
We have not
today.
got this
Commissioner
today.
Smith.
This is the second time it's been on our agenda.
Okay, I don't
This is not
recall.
new
It's not my
information.
area of expertise.
The
as Ed Sullivan would say, it depends.
Yeah,
And it really depends on whether the river moves or not, what floods we have. I mean, you can't contain a river anymore. You can contain a 4-year-old.
With-
So,
with the weather weather conditions, and the flow rates, it will vary from year to year, and but the current placement, hydrology has changed. The conditions have changed in the Clackamas. There is a sandbar very close to where the current boat ramp is, which causes an eddy, which kind of eats out underneath where the current ramp is located. The hydrology report assessed the area and determined that the placement further downstream is in a better position with the current water flow rates to be a little bit less impacted by water flow and deterioration of the surfacing underneath the ramp. So with current conditions, and in theory if they stay similar to what they are to date, it will be less impacted than the current placement of the boat ramp.
anything else?
Brian?
Commissioner Shaw?
So, if we kind of remember, I did a rather temporary little master plan of that park that I passed around to everybody that showed that, as Commissioner Smith was talking about, I think we need to revisit the whole park and see if this is the way to do this. So, because I'm still not satisfied with the information we got about not having it in the Willamette. So I realized that there was that conversation that this was going to take a long time because it has to go through all of these agencies and stuff. But as you saw the list, the number of agencies that this has to go through, I don't know how many more it's going to have to go through if we propose on the Willamette. And I would rather see as much of a detailed study as they did on the Clackamas that they do on the Willamette. And that way, and then also, where is the RV park going to be? What's the property next to McDonald's? Because myself, I really don't care to see that the trucks and the boats are going through this park to the proposed location, because I think that with this 1,000 more people that are going to be living there at the Cove, that Clackamas Park is going to be visited a lot more. And there's going to be more kids and families and stuff, activities going on there. In the meantime, we've got truck and trailer traffic going through there. If this could actually be on the Willamette, we could contain all of the major vehicles and stuff closer to where it would be out of harm's way of a family-friendly park. So I'm not happy with this. I know there's a letter here that wants to be done by December, and so we can start the process. But I'm just not comfortable yet that we've totally explored the idea of a boat ramp on the Willamette.
I will say also that information that I've received from the Oregon State Marine Board, they have told me, and again, I wasn't at the open house, and I obviously wasn't here during a lot of the build up to where we're at currently. They have stated that they will not support placing a facility on the Willamette, which would mean the full cost of developing that facility would fall on the city.
We knew that.
Okay.
That's like parents telling their kids they're going to buy them a car that they don't want.
Okay. So, I guess the point that I want to make is that the Marine Board and staff have been very clear that they're more than willing to have extensive conversations about what happens in the upland side of the park. And if we want to get this money for this boat ramp, then we need to work with those agencies to find a way to make everything work for everybody. And if it doesn't, we always have the opportunity at any point in the process to say, okay, we're done. We'll do it ourselves, or whatever the case may be. But at this point, and I agree with Commissioner Smith. I agree with Commissioner Shaw. We don't want to change the character of that park to the point where it's not a park anymore, where it's just a place to put in boats, a few months out of the year. And that, while I recognize that, we have a big fishing industry, and you have to call it an industry in Oregon City. The guides and the folks that take folks out to fish the Willamette and the Clackamas are a piece of our economic future. So we have to make sure we maintain those services at the same time, making sure that we're, developing our parks in the way that's good for all of our community. So I don't think sending this letter saying we support, moving forward with moving that boat ramp 200 or 300 feet, closer to the mouth of the Clackamas is necessarily caving in and saying that, the State Marine Board or anybody else is going to decide what our park looks like, because we always have the option at the end of the day to say, well, that isn't acceptable to us, so, take your boat ramp and go somewhere else. Although, that is at your own political peril as well, because, as I said, that industry and the industries that swirl around it are, a big part of our community. Commissioner Mengelberg.
I vaguely recall from previous conversations that there was grant money and funding to do it on the Clackamas side, but not on the Willamette side, which is
well, basically, that's what's being said is the Marine Board is the quote granting authority. They also have the best amount of knowledge about all of the agencies that control access to both the river systems. And in their opinion, and the opinion of their hydrologists and experts and scientists, putting it on the Willamette side is a dangerous move because of the amount of water that flows and the stuff that comes down, big trees and other kinds of things, and they feel like it's a safer spot and more likely to survive long term in the spot they picked on the Clackamas. I don't necessarily think that I agree with them, but given the environmental edicts that we suffer under these days, had we fixed the island that grew at the mouth of the cove when it started to, this probably would not be an issue. But because of all of the things you have to go through to take a rock out of the water, it's virtually impossible to do that now. I mean, when I was a kid, and just past being a kid in '96, that's the beginning of that island, and it has grown ever since. So, it pushes the water back over across to the Gladstone side, and then swings back across just under the bridge and attacks the Oregon City side because it doesn't have that natural flow to come around where that island is now. So, we're under all sorts of different constraints, but at the end of the day, unless we want to build it ourselves, I think sending this letter saying we support this now does not necessarily constrain us from saying, their final plan doesn't work for us. Commissioner Shaw.
Well, that could probably happen, Mayor Holliday. I would also encourage us to think about doing a work session or of some kind to start the discussion about a master plan for that area down there.
I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay.
It would only be like the fourth waterfront master plan that we've done, but
Which was my complete point.
There we go.
Or perhaps
They're
add
gonna
it to the goal setting in January. A
I'm good
discussion
with
on
that. Is everybody good with putting that on the goal setting session? There you go, Mr. Conkle.
Is there any recommendation from staff about what might happen where the existing boat ramp is? Is that envisioned to stay as parking or be a beach, or has there been any thinking or
There isn't
recommendation?
really. That's part of Commissioner Smith's issue.
I'm getting really frustrated.
The current plan, as it sits, that's in the packet, shows, some additional roadways, but leaving the parking over where it currently sits. And I think that's part of Commissioner Smith's frustration is that, it takes up literally, it bifurcates the park, it takes out numerous trees, all sorts of things. But don't let me take the words out of your mouth.
I don't want people to think that it's not possible to have the boat ramp where the state's saying it should go. But until we know what we're going to do with that parking lot, if the current boat ramp parking, not the one across the street, the actual, boat ramp and parking that's currently there, if that parking lot went away to build this new boat ramp, then you would have theoretically that whole section of the park that could go back to a park space. But until we know that, saying to move the boat ramp is ridiculous. Until we know if the RV park's going to stay, it's ridiculous. Until we know if we're going to sell the parking lot across the street, was ridiculous. So,
Well,
I don't.
by the same token, we started planning on, the Riverwalk and the other kinds of things. We take the opportunities that we have when they're there to get things in the process, and then we work through the details. I think
We'll see.
not just the boat ramp. I think the entire Clackamas Park, RV park, that whole area needs to be part of our goals discussion in January.
If we were to write this letter of support and get funding from the agencies, what kind of time frame are we looking at? And in other words, would we have ample time to sort the upland stuff out in time to do the boat ramp?
Brutally long period of time.
Yeah,
actually.
so the permitting process is, they're looking currently at construction beginning sometime, in the summer of 2020. It does take a number of years to go through the permitting process, but we would begin the planning phase this winter for putting together a proposal.
So, at our last goal setting, there is a discussion about north waterfront master
That's correct, yeah.
planning, so that it is a current goal. I think based on the discussion tonight, I've heard a couple of options. I guess the question is, would you like staff to come back with a couple of options for moving forward in terms of considering a letter that could be characterizing the concerns that we have about the impacts on the upland area, the concerns that we have about just changes that have happened that weren't foreseeable the last time we did a master plan for Clackamas Park.
Let me see if I can summarize what the commission is thinking, and you guys can all smack me if I'm wrong. But I think we want to move forward. We want to make sure that the city has the ultimate authority about what happens in the upland piece of the park, and that we would at least like to ask the question one more time whether there is any chance of going to the Willamette.
Yes, but I think the bottom line is we're not comfortable doing a letter tonight or endorsing a letter tonight.
Well, we aren't being asked to. What we're being asked to is whether we want to write a letter.
Well, a letter of support, okay?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not there tonight. So
Well, at least two of us aren't there tonight.
yeah, so I'm not sure it's just the whole, are we saying upland just at the Clackamas River, or are we talking about the
Yeah,
whole
just for
park?
Clackamas.
Well, I guess that's the question: is
That's
what things do we need to do to get into place to be able to finally go to the state and say, okay, I think we're at a position where we're comfortable. Here's a design that meets your. Let's just say it ends up being on the Clackamas that gets the access here. Here's what we're willing to do. But so I've heard. We have a goal that says, let's look at this waterfront master plan again in this area.
Correct.
Right? We've heard concerns that we have a lot of plans already in this area that have never been fulfilled. So should we be doing this again? It sounded like tonight we might be open to having that discussion, looking comprehensively at the boat ramp location, the existing parking, the RV park, McDonald's. And, I mean, if you think about it, let's just say we're successful on the Cove with the wetland mitigation on the old Lot 1 and the spit out there along the river, for wetland habitat, educational opportunities, potentially have another path in there. So, I mean, these things start to connect together, and maybe it is time. A lot of things have changed to relook at this, and maybe that's part of the package of saying we need to have an understanding of this park in the entirety because of the impact of moving this ramp before we're ready to say, yes, we're ready to build, but we want to get in the queue for 2020.
And to be honest, which has been my frustration with master plans, parks plans all along, is we try to plan for something when there is no real development horizon. Well, now the development horizon is there, so now is the time to, as the cove is actually developing, as there's actually interest in the properties behind McDonald's and those other things, now's the time when we can actually make some of those decisions that might actually bear fruit in the next 4 or 5 years. Instead of, we did a waterfront master plan back when I was on the commission that cost a couple $100,000 and took a lot of staff time and a lot of public input, and it's still sitting on the shelf back there gathering dust because there was no development horizon. There was no private money. So I agree with Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Shaw. We need to have that discussion. At the same time, I don't want to take us out of the queue for what's the percentage that the State Marine Board pays for a boat ramp?
Varies, but somewhere between 75 and 85%.
So, it would be silly for, again, I say we support the idea of the fact that that ramp is going to have to be replaced because of the hydrology. At the same time, we maintain our ability to control and to say no to the things that are going to happen in not only in the park but in the surrounding area, because that's what our authority is in the first place. So I think it's clear as mud that what you want, right?
Well, and the timing lines up nicely. If this new boat ramp in its current location has a lifespan of 5 years, and we get the money in 2020, it's time to replace it. My question is, do any of these master plans envision the boat ramp at where the agencies are saying they want it?
No.
So this is a whole new wrinkle in the system. Got it.
And we have to hope that this commission by 2020 can make a decision on a RV park that hasn't been made in over however long we've talked about it. It's still, I think, on a work session agenda that we asked for months and months ago. And now again, after discussing with past commissions on whether to sell the property or to not sell the property, now it's on a work session to not sell it again when there's a for sale sign sitting right on it.
Well, and that's the vagaries of the fact that the commission changes members and, priorities change as different folks enter and leave the commission. I understand Commissioner Smith's frustration, but, we're over 10 years on the Beaver Creek Road master plan or concept plan, and we're finally sort of moving along on that. So the wheels of government grind exceedingly slow.
So what happens if this queue we're looking at, why can't that change a couple months? This has to be done by December. What happens? Can we not move that queue forward, Mr. Lewis?
We can, and the main piece to that is that, again, in order to get onto the work sessions, to make sure that they have appropriate time allocated within their organization to help us through the process of the permitting and the design phases, it is ideal to have it done by the end of the year so that we can start and make sure that we're both in their work plan queue as well as their budgetary queue moving forward in order to hit that 5-year window that we know that we have with the temporary fix on the current ramp.
So let's do this. Let's staff bring back a letter that addresses not only staff's, things that you want, but also the concerns you've heard tonight. We can, we can look at it. We can make editorial changes, and then we can decide decide that we don't want to send it at all. Is that acceptable?
That's fine. See if we're ready by then. So.
Commissioner Smith?
I'm only one person. That's fine.
Yeah, but, your opinion is important to me.
I think I've been pretty clear.
Okay. All right. Then we'll, I assume there is nothing from the manager that we can get that at the end of the regular meeting?
Correct.
Then we're going to adjourn this work session. We'll be back in 7 minutes for the regular session.